All right. So, so good morning. And then this is the part two or the second webinar of the IARC tag training series. Uh, Today, there are three speakers, Lee, Llewellyn, myself, I am Indranil, and I have my colleague Andrei Zalnin here. Ed Morrison could not be here today, but we will be covering the industry cluster part one of the series. The industry cluster webinar we have divided in two parts. So the first part is today, and then the second part will be on May 23rd. So outline for today's webinar, we will review the webinar one. That was the first webinar we had on March. And then some basics about business and industry clusters. We will spend a few minutes of time on statsamerica.org innovation website. And then the RDM, the industry cluster mapping tool. That is what my colleague Andrei Zhalnin will be covering today. There will be an exercise and then question and answer session at the end. So let us review the first webinar that we had covered last time. And it was a little bit about the background of the university uh, center grant, and then the role of IARC and TAG team. And then we showed you the RDM, the main website of the regional decision maker, and explained to you some simple map navigation charts, and then some exercise on how to retrieve cluster information for counties by using the identify tool and the chart tool. And my colleague Andre says that everyone has completed their exercise and everyone has done great. So he has given all of you an A grade. So that's a very good news for Monday morning. So let's start with the business and industry cluster. Uh, some basics about that. Uh, what exactly are they? So clusters, and you might have heard about a cluster. There are several articles, there are several journal papers, there are a lot of economic initiative where they talk about industry cluster. These are basically local and regional concentrations of competitive firms which have the following characteristics. They are buying and selling from each other. More or less, they are using similar kind of technology, and then they are sharing a common labor pool. Means the labor skill, the skill needed, the knowledge needed, the occupation force needed is common. More or less, they are sharing a supply chain. So there are two types of information here. One is a supply chain and another one is a value chain. And then the supply chain is a big subject in itself, but within the industry cluster, there are synergies. The synergies can be developed for the supply chain. If we are following a cluster-based economic development strategy, or we are trying to promote a cluster, it is likely that the cluster can have innovation because they are sharing and constantly learning and leveraging each other's knowledge. So within a cluster, a lot of interaction can happen. Then the other set of definition is a cluster. They include a set of supporting services and specialized infrastructure. They will have a special need for the infrastructure. Uh, for example, a biomedical and biotechnical cluster may need specialized laboratories. So very specific chemical and pharmaceutical laboratories will be there, or they may need a very specialized set of services. Now, a cluster can have both high and low value added employment. And this is an important aspect. It's not that the cluster is only comprised of high paying jobs. These are all the combination of jobs. So when you compare cluster to cluster, you will see that some cluster may have very high average earning, such as chemical industries cluster in Indiana. But within that cluster, different kinds of industries, they will have a very different level of average earning or average weekly wage. In general, the clusters, they produce for exports outside the region. And that's why it is an important economic development strategy. And in doing so, they drive the creation of wealth in a region. So there is always, means if the regions are focusing on cluster-based economic development strategy, then it is likely that wealth is getting generated. There are a lot of exports that are happening, and these economic development strategy, they tend to promote, accelerate the clusters. So here is a schematic, a very simple schematic for what a cluster can look like. So at the core of it are the driver industries. So these are the select set of industries which form the core of the cluster. Most likely they are exporting in nature. And then there are suppliers. These industry will have several set of suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And these suppliers, they can even import. They can be local suppliers, or these driver industries, they are importing their supplies. And then they have customers. They can be local customers, but mostly they are also exporting. So these core or driver industries are so specialized that they can export uh, outside the region. Then other component is the labor force. So as said, the labor will have a variety of skill, means from highly skilled job to medium to low skilled job also, they can all be in a cluster. So there could be the training and education program, various types of workforce development program uh, by Department of Workforce Development, or even through a workforce initiative. And that's where the government services can be involved. And then these core and driver industries, they will have support industries, and these support industries could be all sorts of research and technology R&D functions which are going on, and then very specialized infrastructure or specialized type of equipment testing, prototype testing, a very specialized labs. And then there is another set of labor pool here which are highly skilled, which are supporting this cluster. So you can see that cluster is a very diverse set of industries. All are interconnected to each other uh, in, in different kinds of linkages. So they can share initiatives, or they are directly connected as a supplier and customer. So here is an example of supply chain cluster. And this is developed by Ed Morrison of PCRD. So in the first case, the first diagram, which is above, what you see, there is a dominant firm. So there is a core or driver industry, and there are firms here. And then they have a set of suppliers, and they are training these suppliers, what is called as OEM, or original equipment manufacturers, the tier 1 and tier 2. And they are trying to develop the supplier base either within the region, or at least close by. So many Japanese auto factories, they have this kind of supply chain cluster. So they are trying to train, develop, and specialize their own suppliers. Now in the second set, there is a set of dominant firms in the region, and then there are out of region suppliers. So for example, these firms are importing something from outside, as well as accessing some supplies from within the region. And then what they do, or what the strategy is is to identify those outside suppliers, the materials which are being supplied, and see if they can be developed locally or they can be accessed locally. This is what is known as closing the gap or import substitution. So for example, in a national context, the supply chain for wind power components, you know that wind industry has become a high growth industry. There are several wind power plants in Indiana, in Midwest, and also in the mountain region. So in the US now we have more than 550 industry establishments which are manufacturing certain aspect of the wind turbine or which are involved in the wind industry development. So about a decade ago, around 60% of equipments and wind industry, wind turbine part were getting imported. Now it is somewhere between 40 and 50%. So this is the latest information. I just attended the American Wind Energy Association conference last week, and we came to know that, oh, okay, within the US, we are trying to close the gap. So it's not like we are not importing everything from China, Germany, or other European countries. So this is the example of the second type of supply chain cluster development. Now, here is a schematic for a specific cluster, the biomedical and biotechnology cluster. So you can see in the middle are the core industries, and these are pharmaceutical, medicine, diagnostics, biological products, medical instruments. So there is a whole range of core industries which are involved, and you can see they have a variety of suppliers from lab testing equipment manufacturer to even organic and inorganic chemical manufacturer. And they can have a very diversified range of buyers from doctor, dentist, hospitals, the wholesaler, druggist, and all those things. The supporting industries are all the R&D facilities, uh, the finance aspect, and you know that biomed and biotech, they generate a lot of patents. So of course the intellectual property attorneys means these are part of the supporting industries. But then the specialized infrastructure could be hazardous waste disposal, or very specialized construction of laboratories, or very with highly clean water supply. So this can give you an idea about like how diversified a specific cluster can be. Now here I'm going to run an audio by Lee, uh, and this is an example.
Cluster analysis. And maybe for those of you who are listening, it is basically something that you're all very familiar with. But my first experience with using industry cluster analysis was started back in 2000 when I was with the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership. We hired Battelle Memorial Institute out of Cleveland to come in and help us understand what were the industries that were driving the Central Indiana economy. Now, Central Indiana Corporate Partnership was formed in 1999 to bring the CEOs of the largest Indiana or Central Indiana companies to the table to think strategically about the future of the region. So that was bringing in the CEOs from Eli Lilly and Company, from Allison Transmission. I brought the university presidents from IU and Purdue around the table. We had Cook Group, Roche Diagnostics, Dow AgroSciences, really sort of the who's who of all of the major Central Indiana companies and their CEOs. Vice presidents, second in command, were not allowed to substitute. It had to be the top person sitting at the table. So when Battelle Memorial Institute went out and did the analysis, they came back in 2001 with the report and identified life sciences, advanced manufacturing, and logistics as the economic drivers of the Central Indiana economy. And now we look at that and we take that for granted and think, well, that's just a foregone conclusion. We all sort of get that now, but when we presented that information back to the CICP board, and we said life sciences, the people sitting around the table, and that included Sidney Terrell, who was the CEO of Eli Lilly and Company, and Miles Brand, who was the president of IU and obviously over the IU Med School. That included Steve Ferguson, who is the chair of Cook Group, and at that time was, I think, maybe the president of the IU trustees, but certainly was on the board of trustees. We had Martin Jiske, who was the president of Purdue. We had the CEOs of Dow AgroSciences, Roche Diagnostics, and to a person, when we said life sciences, they all said, no, you're wrong. Central Indiana is not big enough. We don't have enough assets in life sciences that can really justify that kind of focus. It can't work here. And that gave us an opportunity. Again, Battelle came back and started looking at that web of connections, the suppliers, the customers, all of the connections that supply chain that was in existence, as well as the connections to the orthopedics industry in Warsaw, which was also really kind of operating under the radar screen at that time, at least as far as the leadership in the state was concerned. And it was that industry cluster analysis, looking at the supply chain, looking at that web of connections, the export potential, the innovation potential that was taking place. It was documenting all of that finally brought those CEOs around, led to the formation of BioCrossroads. And again, while now we sort of take that life science cluster and its prominence for granted, when we first raised that issue back in 2001, it was not really seen as, that wasn't really a foregone conclusion. It wasn't something that was taken for granted. So it was that industry cluster analysis that really helped us tell the story for that group of CEOs at the time. And looking back, it's been a really impressive trajectory, but it took that industry cluster analysis. To my knowledge, that was one of the first. It took that analysis to really propel that whole discussion forward.
Now, you might have heard about cluster that there are vertical linkages and then there are horizontal linkages. So this can be explained a little better in this schematic. When you see a link between supplier, core industry, and buyers, these are, in general, they are also called as vertical linkages, but then other term are backward connections or backward and forward linkages. So suppliers, they are selling to the core industry, that's the backward linkage, and then core industry means they are selling to their buyers, that's the forward linkage. Now the support industries and specialized infrastructure, all these connections or all these network, they form the horizontal linkages. So many time in economic development practice, clusters, they are also explained as a connection of network and linkages, including vertical and horizontal ones. So who are using cluster? And there are many cluster-based economic development strategies and initiatives. So it is international. United Kingdom and European countries, they are using it. India, Australia, New Zealand, and many more. Within the US, there are state level initiatives, Louisiana, Arizona, Massachusetts, Indiana. So cluster is not a very new concept. A lot of people are trying to implement cluster-based economic development initiatives. And then within Indiana, there are regional planning organizations who are using it. Means they are exploring the industry cluster opportunities, what kind of strengths their regions can have. And then also the industry cluster data has been used in the SETS planning. SETS is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategies document. So by using the industry cluster data and by doing some analysis, you can identify your region's strength, means which cluster they are specialized in the region. And when I say specialized, that means they have the capacity to export. So within the first EDA grant, means the last webinar we had explained that we had a series of EDA grant. So the first EDA grant, we had identified 17 industry clusters, and then within the manufacturing, it was such a large industry cluster by itself that we had subdivided it into 6 subclusters. So the list of business and industry clusters are here, means, and when I say this list, each of these industry cluster, they include a whole series of NAICS 6-digit industry sectors. NAICS stand for North American Industry Classification System. So at the simplest or most aggregate level, it has a 2-digit code such as agriculture, and at the most detailed level, it goes to 6-digit codes. So when we developed our industry cluster definitions, those were based on 6-digit NAICS codes. And our definitions are open. I will show you where they are located on the website so that you can go and see which industry sector are included in each of these clusters. Second point, our cluster definitions, they overlap. So an industry sector is not an island by itself. It cannot just participate in one industry cluster. It is providing services to different kinds of industry cluster. So for some industry cluster, it can be the supplier, but for some industry cluster, it is operating as the buyer. So there is a whole set of network connections that is happening there. And this completes the list. So as you can see, number 15, which is manufacturing supercluster, there is a set of 6 subcluster. Now if you have the cluster data, you can analyze it for a large region such as state of Indiana, and we have done the analysis, and in fact within the manufacturing supercluster, there are few where Indiana has been doing very good, such as transportation equipment manufacturing, fabricated metal, primary metal, and of course transportation and logistics, biomed, these are some of the strengths for Indiana as an example. Now we want to cover a little bit about cluster analysis steps. Now we will be covering this section in more detail in the part 2 of this webinar, which is on May 23rd. So what happens is, when the cluster is present in a region's economy, and you have a set of pre-identified cluster and subcluster, you need to identify their strengths and weaknesses. And one caveat here is, when we say region, it means a group of counties. Cluster-based strategies cannot operate at an individual county level in general, unless until you are a very big county such as Cook County or the Chicago, in the Chicago metropolitan area. And the region is, you need to have a critical mass to have these cluster-based initiatives to work on. Means you need to identify them, and then you need to accelerate the cluster in your region. And some basic data that you use for strength and weaknesses to identify where your cluster stands are employment, establishments, location quotient, and average earnings data. So in our databases, by employment, what we are using is the place of work employment. There is an important distinction. Employment from the government sources and also the proprietary sources are of two types. They can be place of residence versus place of work. So place of work employment is important to use. And then establishments versus firms. So establishment is a single physical location. When you are doing a cluster analysis, you need to identify the establishments which are part of your cluster, where actual physical business is being conducted, the manufacturing is happening. Means firms is a company, means it can be a group of more than one establishment. So the data can be available at both the level. So you need to focus on the establishment's data. Location quotient is an important measure for cluster, and it is based on, usually it is based on employment, and this indicator has the capacity to show the specialization. So it is actually a ratio of clusters regional employment to the nation's employment share, or simply compared to the national average, how better you are. So if your location quotient is 1, that means it is same as the national average. But if it is greater than 1, then the economic based theory says that you are likely exporting in that cluster. If it is less than or equal to 1, you are likely serving local and regional demand. So how do you interpret an LQ? A 1.3 LQ means like your employment in that cluster in your region is 30% more concentrated than the nation. So in general, in the field work, in practice, what we have found is to use an LQ cutoff or minimum of 1.2, so 20% above uh, than the national average. And it is at this level, then it is likely that you are exporting. And we will be covering the location quotient data mapping and further explanation in the part 2 of this webinar. So statsamerica.org innovation is a website, and I wanted to spend you some time on that because both of our EDA grants on industry cluster and occupation cluster, the data is available there. The link is given here. So if you go to the statsamerica.org innovation website, and if you can go to the tools, so in the middle there is cluster analysis, and then get industry cluster data, and then there are cluster definitions. So if you click on cluster definitions, it takes you to a web page from where you can access the detailed industry cluster definition. So let me open that, and it's a PDF document, and you can get all the definition by the NAICS 6-digit codes here. So for example, advanced material cluster. So all the cluster definitions are listed here. So if you are using industry cluster strategy and anyone asks you like what are the underlying definitions, they are all open and available here. Let me go back a little bit here. And then back in that statsamerica.org innovation website, if you go to report, and if you click on unlocking rural competitiveness, the role of regional clusters, that report, this report was prepared in 2007 based on our industry cluster research. And then that the earlier grant means the old maps are also available on the maps tab. So maps from 2007 report will give you all the old mapping. Now what had happened here is we had to use the public data sets or QCEW data, and then the data had quite a bit of suppression at the NAICS 6-digit codes. So we have a data partner called as EMSI, Economic Modeling Specialist Inc., and they have developed an algorithm to unsuppress those numbers. And we are using those numbers to develop our industry cluster employment and establishments and LQ data. So the difference between the statsamerica.org and our regional decision maker is when we found that there is quite a bit of suppression and data gaps. So in the RDM, we are using the EMSI data, which is completely unsuppressed data. Now, by the way, these algorithms have been developed by different organizations and even universities. So for example, UIUC, Urbana-Champaign, has its own algorithm. So there are ways to unsuppress the employment and establishment numbers. Now I will ask Andrei Zhalnin to go to the RDM website and explain you where the industry cluster data are and some function.
Thank you, Indranil, and good morning, everyone. Hopefully you hear me well enough. I'll try to speak loud, so let me know if you hear me well or not. But first, I'd like to do overview of what we've learned last time in our webinar. And I was going through main website page. So let me switch to our RDM website. And this website is designed to help in planning process, and we're going to have a list of different data that we have and different topics. And right now for you, the useful topic is the useful section is JS Atlas, where you can find different maps, links to different maps on different topics, and also section tutorial section. Or I'm going to rename it to training section, where you can find lists of different tutorials, video tutorials, text tutorials, and also exercises for you to complete. The exercise 2 is not ready yet, but it will appear on the website soon. Also below you can see the table with the webinar links and also dates, and we also have link to recorded section of the webinar. So right now I'll switch to our mapping page for industry and occupation clusters, and just let me show you again components that we covered last time. So in the upper left corner, you can see navigation tools that allows you to switch between different zoom levels. In the upper right corner, you can see different you can see selection of different base maps, and below is layer list. So basically all layers that we have on this website. For now, just disregard the rest of the layers. We'll focus mainly on industry clusters, jobs layers. And this is what we're going to be working with today. Also, in the upper part of the website, there is a menu bar with different links to different tools. And this is where you can access list of layers, map legend, identify information, and zoom function, and others. So let me switch quickly back to PowerPoint and tell you what we're going to cover today. And today we're going to cover 3 tools. One is drawing tool, and this tool actually I should have shown this last time, because this tool will help you to outline your region, because several people complain it's hard to stay focused on those counties and find them. So this tool will help you to outline that region once, and then so it makes easy for you to return and analyze that region using different other tools. And the second is custom region summary for industry clusters, and this is the tool that works with industry clusters data. And finally, if we have time, data query tool or search data tool that allows you to look into attribute tables for these maps of industry clusters. So let me switch back again to our map, and here is our map. So first, let me start with drawing tool. So I'm going to upper menu, and I'm using zoom to state tool, and selecting Indiana. This is quick zoom to the state of your choice. And today we'll focus on 7 counties in northwestern Indiana. So I'm using my zoom tools at the left. So I'm clicking on plus sign and selecting northwestern corner of Indiana and zooming further to this region. So we're interested in those 7 counties in upper corner, western corner of Indiana. So I'm gonna open drawing tool, and you can see this this icon in the top, draw and measure. So once you click on that, a pretty simple menu appears here. So it allows you to draw any graphics on top of your maps, point, line, free-flowing line, and selection of different types of polygons, and also free-flowing polygon, and the last is text. You can add actually text or labels to your map. Just be aware that the graphics that you draw on the map will stay during your session, but if you reload your browser or close and then reopen your browser, the graphics will be lost. But at the same time, if you draw that graphics on top of your map, you can use print button and print your map with the graphics as a PDF file or image file and use it for your report, for example. So let me click on this polygon button, and this is what I'm going to be using for outlining my region. Again, first you need to select different options here for colors and line thickness. And again, remember that you select this first, and then you draw, and you will not have choice on option to change these colors after you draw your polygon. You would have to clear your drawing and then redraw again. So first you need to pick up colors, and I want my polygon to be not to be filled actually. So I'm setting alpha value, which is transparency, to 0. So 0 is fully transparent area, and 1 is fully opaque. For outline color, I'll choose red, and I will increase the width of my line to say 3 or maybe even 4. And for now, I don't want measurements, but if you want to measure your area, and this is in case, for example, you outline some area that you want to measure actually, because right now I don't want to measure area of my region. But if you click this check button, radio button, you can measure your area in kilometers, miles, or whatever units you prefer. And distance units is for line option. So I'm not going to using the not going to be using measurements right now. I'll use just this polygon. So I click on the map and then draw the line around my 7 states, 7 counties, sorry. Right. And to complete the area, you click double click on the last point. So I have my area ready. Now I want to add some text. So I'm choosing this A letter icon and typing some text, say northwestern Indiana region. This is going to be my label. I want to make it bold, and I want this to be in red, again in red. Font 20 probably will be sufficient. So you click on any point on the map, and you have now your label here. if you need to adjust your label or your polygon, you have an option to do so. Some, oops. Okay, yeah, let me switch back to, no, this is what, all right, let me go back a little and explain. If you close that window, this pop-up window, the graphics disappear, but if you click on that icon again, it will reappear again. So you can, for example, if you want to navigate somewhere else or do something else, and you can remove that graphics. Now I want to switch to a different tool now, and I want to show you how to calculate summary for industry clusters. So let me still have my region displayed. By the way, if because this pop-up window is pretty big, so I want to minimize it. So if you click on that minimize button, you can have that small icon, and I can put it somewhere at the bottom. So now I'm gonna use my industry summary tool, industry cluster summary tool, and this is the button, the menu button that opens this tool. It has a little factory graphics. All right, so I open this pop-up window, and again you have a selection of different drawing options, and for complex region it's probably better to use this polygon option. So you need to draw polygon around the area of your interest, and this polygon should touch all counties that you're interested in, but not those that you don't want to include in your custom region. So again, I am double clicking to complete my polygon, and after you have your polygon drawn, click submit button, and then the summary of industry cluster jobs for those 7 counties will be calculated. If you want to go back and analyze your region, say what county contributes more into particular cluster, you can again recall our last session and use identify button. But for now, these numbers that you now see on your screen, these numbers are for the entire region. So let me quickly glance through these and see what's the largest cluster in this region. And I can I can see that biomedical and biotechnical cluster has most jobs in this region. It's 35,800 jobs for this region. These are all 23 clusters, industry clusters, including manufacturing subclusters. So this is the way you can display them and calculate them. Unfortunately, for now, there is no way for you to copy these results into Word document or save it to the table. But we're working on that option, and there will be we'll add this function later, so that you can print results of this analysis. Right now, you can do it only, I think, you can copy just the value as a number, or the text, the name of the cluster, but not altogether. So again, you can close this window and results will disappear, but you can again, during the same session, if you click on the menu, you can get those results back. If you reload your browser or restart your browser, results will be lost. All right, so now we looked at the at those 2 tools, and let me try one more thing again with drawing tool. because there should be an option here when you can, if you want to restore your pop-up window for drawing tools, you simply click on that icon and it will expand itself. So let's see if I can do that. No, looks like not. All right. Okay. It's not. So now let's go to next tool, and this is search data tool. And this is basically query, gives you ability to query any data, any layer on our website. So right now I want to query, let's say biomedical and biotechnical clusters. And you can see that I put this map now on top of my base map, so you can see employment numbers in those clusters. And right now what I want to do is to so this query tool is actually pretty sophisticated. You have several options here in the top menu of this pop-up window. You can search by text. That means you do some text query. You can also search by using graphics, and this is where you can select the region. And there is another option, spatial search. So we'll cover today only text and graphical search, and I will show you what you can do with these. So first, let me zoom out back to Indiana. And I want to do search because we have national data, but I want to do search only within Indiana. So I'm going to use this option to select my only Indiana. So again, you need to draw a polygon in such a way that it touches all Indiana counties, but not those in neighboring states. So I'm double click and I'm completing this polygon. After you did the selection in this graphical search tool, you click on include text query in selection criteria. And this is important because this tells the program that you want to include text search, not only your graphical search. So and I'm selecting now layer biomedical and biotechnical industry clusters. So when you select layer, you have two options. One option is when you have cluster employment, and you can search for particular specific number. Basically, these are all numbers from the attribute table. But you can also enter your own search criteria. And once I select that, you can see name of the field. So what I'm going to do, what I'm doing right now, I'm selecting the field name because this is what you will need for entering text search. And put this field in your, there is some problem with selecting. Okay, if it's not working this way, I'm gonna type this manually, but you should have an option of or capability of doing this copy and paste option. At least in Internet Explorer it's working on my computer. So I'm gonna type the name of the field, biomed tech, then underscore employment 2010. And my search criteria would be show me clusters that have more than say 2,000 jobs. let me, yeah. I'm hitting search button, and the program will select those counties that have clusters, this cluster with more than 2,000 jobs. And let me first close all these pop-up windows that appear. So it shows you the entire country, and apparently my graphic search didn't go well. But anyway, if you don't use this graphic search restriction, you'll get results for the whole country. You can see now all counties in US that have employment more than 2,000 people or jobs in biomedical cluster selected on the map. So right now I'm going to use actually the option that I showed you last time. I'm going to go to previous extent. I'm clicking on that button, previous extent. It's in the upper left corner, which is very convenient. It will bring you back to the extent that you had on your map. So let me again go back to my graphic search, and I still have actually this polygon here. And let me click on search button here in this graphic search tab. So I click on search, and yes, now I have counties only within Indiana that have employment more than 2,000 jobs in biomedical cluster. And again, I'm going back, I'm using previous extent button, going closer back to my extent. And here you can open attribute table, and actually you can export this attribute table. So it has this cluster employment data, it has state and county names, and you can export this to CSV, which is format for using an Excel, or TXT file. So there is an export button. Once you click that, you can save this file on your computer as a table. There is also interactive. So once you hover your mouse over any record in your table, it will show this county on the map. So you can play with this tool and then see, and actually this is going to be part of your other exercise for this session. If you want to restore your attribute table, you click on this green button in the upper menu, green table button. So this button restores your table. If you need to clear your results, you can hit clear button, but then you're gonna lose all your results of your search. You can go back to, again, graphic search or text search and modify your search criteria. Say I want to have not the threshold, not 2,000, but 3,000 jobs. So let me go back to my graphic search, because I'm gonna restrict area of my search, and click search button here. If I see any changes, well, apparently okay, I cleared my polygon. Anyway, so you can modify this search on the fly, yet clear it results of my search here in this tab too. So this allows you to look and search through data on the map for each cluster, for any cluster that you see in the list, and you don't have to have this map displayed actually on your screen to do this search. There is another convenient button in this search tool that allows you to change those modes. Either you can create new selection, or you can add to current selection or remove from current selection. So it has a lot of capabilities, which is convenient, although it may require some time to learn that. So with this, I'm completing mapping training part of our webinar, and there will be an exercise for you for the next webinar as well. So I'm Just there will be also a tutorial for these tools that I just demonstrated to you, text tutorials, and they will be available on our web page on our RDM website. So with this, I'm passing word to Indranil, and he will conclude our webinar.
Thank you, Andre. So what you have seen today are few tools by which you can query, visualize the employment data related to industry cluster. Now the query tool, and it's an enhanced search tool. What we will be providing are some of the video tutorials and training materials on the RDM website, which is the main website, so that you can do some exercise and become familiar with this tool, because this tool can be very useful for, say, benchmarking, because you can retrieve a certain data, certain employment data above certain criteria for the whole nation. And then, as you can see, you can even export your table, and you can take it to Excel and do all sorts of analysis. So today we have been focusing on the employment data, but the next webinar, which will be on May 23rd, we will be covering establishments and location quotient analysis. So here in the employment data, when Andre showed you that the regional summary tool, that's an important tool. So you can assess the industry cluster employment for your region, or you can compare it with another region, with your peer group, or even for benchmarking. So for the next webinar, we will be focusing on the establishment data, which will be on this mapping website, but then another location quotient data, which is entirely a separate mapping website. So with this, we will be concluding our webinar and opening it for any questions. And another thing, thanks much for completing the first exercise. Uh, and that gave us a lot of feedback how to improve these tools and how to work on it. And then there were some ideas also about new kinds of data, such as housing data. So if you have any other ideas, please let us know, because it helps us improve the mapping tools and websites. Any questions? Yes. Yes, we are hearing you.
Hello, Chris. Can you hear us? This is a question or? Do we have a conference call scheduled with probably not going to start until also Linda Solo.
Yes, there was a question about exercise and tutorial. So we will be notifying that, and please keep checking our main RDM website, because all the tutorials, the video recording, the video tutorials which are also being developed for each of the tools, and today's recorded webinar will be available there soon. A lot of video based tutorials are already available, so you can go and explore that, and that will give you some understanding of what all the tools are under development. Any more question? If you have any question, you can email to Lee or myself, or Andre. I am and on the screen now you can see our email IDs. So any question, please just send an email to Lee, Ed, or Indranil or Andre. And thanks a lot for all of you for attending and giving us your time. You have any feedback, please let us know. It can be about data or way to display map or any specific type of tool or any idea that you can have. This way the mapping websites will be more useful to you. With this, I will be concluding the webinar. Thanks for attending. Goodbye.